Hey, good morning, church family. It's Friday, and Pam is on vacation, so I get to fill in for her. I know some of you are extremely disappointed. Sorry to disappoint you. But this week, I get the privilege to kind of kick off, and you're going to be hearing the different pastors share their story on how they came to know Jesus. Mine's going to be two parts because I get to do it today, and I also get to do it on Monday. So I'm going to share my story, and so I'm going to break it up in two segments because my story is kind of lengthy. So let me just tell you my upbringing. I grew up Hispanic, obviously, in a Hispanic home, Catholic. You're Catholic like you have diabetes in a Catholic home and in a Hispanic home. And my exposure to Catholicism was if there was a party, we were at church. And what I mean by that is if there was a wedding or a baptism, which usually followed by a party, is when my parents went to church. About my later elementary school years, so 5th and 6th grade, my parents wanted me to do my catechism, so they signed me up, and we were going more often to church during that time. I did my catechism. I was an altar boy. And then around, I think, late 6th grade, summer of 6th grade, in between kind of 6th grade and 7th grade, I was at in our neighborhood, there was a Jehovah's Kingdom hall right next door to our house. So during the summer, they would do these like events for youth, and they invited me to it because they wanted to bring the neighborhood kids there, and I was a fat kid and loved pizza, so I was in. They got me at pizza. And then my buddy Ted, which was a neighbor of mine, he went to a Lutheran church, and on Wednesdays they had youth activities, and they also had pizza. So 2 nights a week, I'm a fat kid. Yes, I'm in. And I started going to that as well. And then one weekend on a Sunday mass, we were in our class, and the nun asked a question. And I remember distinctly it had to do with Moses, and I knew the answer. And I raised my hand out of excitement because I knew the answer, because Edgar never knew the answers. But this time he did, because he had learned it just at the Jehovah's Witness Kingdom and on Wednesday at the Lutheran church. So I'm excited because I finally got the answer. And they call on me. I say the answer, and I got candy, and I got it right. But the nun was a little suspicious because, how did you know that? And I elaborated the story too. And so she was like, questioning, I don't know, baby, because maybe I was a dumb kid, or I don't know. And all of a sudden, I know the answer. So she tells Father Giovanni about this, and they come to my house to have a meeting with my parents, because they had asked me how I knew the answer. And I said, well, I just learned it over at the Jehovah Kingdom hall the other night. And then on Wednesday at the Lutheran church, they taught the same thing. And so, that's how I know the answer. I'm learning the Bible, and they weren't happy. They weren't happy with that. And I went on and did this whole thing where they came to my house. They were extremely upset. And I remember hearing the father say, they're trying to steal our kids. And that's when I was like, I remember telling my parents, I said, how do I know that they're not wrong and that they're right? How about if everybody's wrong? I don't want to go to church anymore. And my parents, for whatever reason, I don't even know why to this day, decided to listen to their young preteen kid and said, okay, we don't have to go to church. Stop going to church from that point on. And went on to high school, did the whole party scene, all that stuff. Got involved into some bad things. Never was a drug user. Tried a lot of stuff, but never got into it. My drug of choice was alcohol and gambling. Got heavy into gambling as I got older, and drinking early in high school for me. And then my life just kind of started with meh. I didn't feel like I was a bad guy. I didn't feel like I was hurting anybody. So didn't want to change my life. But my journey kind of began because there was this girl when I was a senior, who always talked about the Bible and would bring her Bible to class and would be trying to tell me about Jesus. And I remember calling her a Bible thumper and telling her, let me just live my life, do your God thing. God's not for me. And that girl ended up becoming my wife later. April was the girl who was always, trying to bring me to church and inviting me to never came. And went off and graduated and was chasing the American dream, chasing the dollar. I had a love for money and alcohol. I was trying to get as much money as fast as I possibly could. I wanted to be rich and retire by the age of 50. That was my goal. That's what I wanted to do. So whatever needed to be done to do that, I was willing to do it. And got in a lot of trouble. I spent some time in not in a U.S. jail, but in a Mexican jail. I got caught doing some bad things in Mexico, and spent some time in Mexico in jail. It cost me a lot of money to get out, and I did. And I think that's probably the first time I kind of started questioning God and wondering if there was a God. I had heard of God, but I had never experienced God. And then I think it was around the age of 20, just was not satisfied with my life at all. Kept changing jobs, felt like I was hitting a wall constantly, and I was not excited about my life. And then my grandmothers, who I loved dearly, my dad's mom and my mom's mom, who raised me, who I loved and adored, for who they kind of helped me become, because there were some amazing ladies who loved Jesus, and they were just awesome women, and they taught me a lot of stuff. They took me to church, for one, and my dad's mom was an avid, like, hardcore Christian, but nobody knew she was a Christian. She was afraid of what the family would do or say if she told them that she had left Catholicism. So she was kind of like a closet Christian. My mom's mom was a very devoted Catholic, but not your typical Catholic. She wasn't about praying to the saints and all that stuff. She was just about going to worship Jesus, and she would take us. She lived in Delano, California, and I remember spending summers with her and taking us to church. She lived on one end of Delano, and church was at the other end, and we would walk across town to go to church. And those are very fond memories that I have of both of those ladies. And that summer, spring, my mom's mom got hit by a drunk driver, ironically, because I was an alcoholic. And because I was so busy making money, I never made it out to see her one last time. 4 weeks later, my dad's mom got diagnosed with a lung disease, and she passed. And I remember just being angry at God, extremely angry at him, because he had taken two women that I loved, and I knew that loved him, and that I knew that served him, and I didn't understand. I didn't understand why God would do that, why this great almighty God would take two women who worshiped him and loved him, and yet here I was, an alcoholic, and nobody significant, and yet he would spare my life. So I became angry and bitter at God, and, even the fist at him, of saying, God, why did you do this? And I remember sitting in my room. It was late August, and in this time I had ran into April because we had lost touch, and she told me that her dad had been diagnosed with cancer, and in that time he passed. And I was even more angry at God. I didn't know. I met my father-in-law once when he was in the hospital. I didn't get a chance to meet him as a son-in-law, father-in-law relationship goes. But I remember seeing my mother-in-law and my wife, hurt, devastated, but yet there was something different about what they were going through. There was still a joy. There was definitely sadness, but there was a joy because I remember hearing this. He's now in heaven. It was confusing to me at that time. In late August, my drinking habit had just spiraled. I was full on, even more an alcoholic than I was before. And in September, I remember distinctly, it was September, and I was sitting in my room, frustrated with myself because I couldn't get drunk anymore. And I had a gun, and I was going to take my life. And then I blacked out. My room got cold. I felt like I was inside of a fridge. And then I woke up on the doorsteps of Not Avenue Christian Church. And I remember the preacher preaching and hearing what he was talking about. And I remember thinking, April told him my life story. And I was sitting with April and her mom. And I was like, how dare she tell this dude my story? He was talking right at me. At least that's what it felt like. They did a altar call. And I'm sitting there wrestling with that decision. And then I remember walking. And a song that is really, every time I hear it now, I start crying. Crystal Lewis, White as Snow. And I remember going up front, and Jovan was there to take me to the back and help me make that decision to follow Jesus. So we walked back there, that hallway room, that same cold feeling that I felt the night before. I felt it again, but it was different. Because as we walked the hallway, I remember hearing this. Welcome home. I sat in the room with Joe. He read out of Romans. And as he was reading, I remember looking at Joe and I said, Joe, I have a habit of whatever I do, I'm all in. Anything I'd ever done in my life, I go all in. And you're sitting here describing this Jesus. And last night, I was about to end my life. And if this Jesus is all that you're saying he is, then I'm all in. He asked me, do you want to get baptized today or next week? Do you want to invite some family? I'm like, Joe, if I can do it right now, let's do this thing. I'm all in. Let's do this Jesus thing. That day I got baptized, and I never looked back. And I want to share the rest of that story, because there's a lot of hurt. All what you just heard, there's a lot of hurt that happened. And I'll share that on Monday. But man, all I can tell you this, if you've never, especially thinking this time of so much craziness of COVID-19, the racial tension and everything that's going on, man, talk about not knowing, not being sure. I know what that feels like. But now that I know Jesus, I know exactly what my mother-in-law and my wife and why they had a joy when they lost my wife's dad and my mother-in-law's husband. I know that joy. I know that joy. And if someone's told you that being a Christian is easy, they've lied to you. It's not. I mean, you look at the stories in the Bible, there's pain, but it's not all bad pain. There's good pain, and there's this overwhelming joy knowing that God is there walking with you all the way through it, through the loss of job, through diseases, through death, through all that. And God is still there. God is still so good. And man, I hope that you hear this story, my story, and that it resonates with you. And if you've never made that decision to say yes to Jesus, let me tell you, It will be the best decision you've ever made in your life. And you won't regret it. You won't regret it. Yes, you maybe been to church and you've been hurt by church, whether it's a Catholic church, a Christian church, you name the church. It's men who do this and run this church, and it's flawed. It's always going to be, because we're human. We try to do our best, but we make mistakes, and don't let that be the reason that you walk away or you don't answer the call. You don't answer God knocking on your heart. If he's knocking, open up and let him in, and then just go for it. Be all in for Jesus. And I'd love to, answer any questions you may have, or if you want to walk this journey, and we'd love to connect with you. So do me a favor. If this touched you in any shape, form, in any way, you felt like, man, this is speaking to me, and there's something there, do me a favor. As soon as this video ends, just text the word belong to the number 31996. And we'll get a hold of you. And I will make sure that if you do this weekend, whether it's today, Friday, or Saturday or Sunday, I will personally call you on Monday. So text the word belong to 31996. And any questions you may have, even about my story, I'd love to dig deeper into that. And again, I'm going to share a little bit more of all this on Monday. So again, I hope that this spoke to you. I hope you were encouraged with it, and let us know, because we want to walk this journey with you. We want to celebrate with you, because like I said, that day I wanted just to do it and get baptized. And even though I've been baptized as a child, as a kid in the Catholic Church, I want it to be my decision, because that's the right thing to do. And Pastor Joe talked about, it's an outward expression of what already happened in our inward heart. So baptism is not salvation. It's an action that we do to show the world that we're all in for Jesus. So again, text the word belong to 31996. Love you guys, and I hope that you were encouraged by this.